Welcome to the Impact Show. I hope you have had an absolutely fantastic week. If you haven't, make that week better by doing whatever you need to do to make that happen. I am Samuel I Can Win Ikinwin, your host. I'm looking forward to tonight's show. We're going to open up the phone lines any moment now, but this week's been an extremely interesting week. I've had so many things going on in terms of my own property journey. Some of you who may have been on our on the last pin meeting that I did this month, I announced that I was stepping out of my role as the Canary Wharf pin host. So again, so much different things have been taking place. Today I've just come back from a whole myriad of viewings, again, moving forward on my property journey, because guys, this is what we've got to be doing, and also helping a plethora of our coaches and coaching clients to do the same. So this week's been fantastic, but the news, what's being said in the news? Apparently lockdown is over to some degree. And it's really interesting because although the government may ease things up, and although pubs may be open now, barbers may be open now, etc., the funniest thing is the press, the releases are still what they are. And this is one of the things which I find extremely funny, because it goes back to one of the previous weeks, I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago, when I said on one of our live shows something very interesting. I said you cannot, and you should not allow your investing decisions to be made by the media. All right. And I'm going to stand with that. I'm going to say that again. You cannot and you should not allow your investment decisions to be made by the media. So before we get into tonight's show, before I read off to you guys the disclaimer, before I open up the telephone lines for you guys to be able to call in and ask any property questions that you have, I want to first and foremost say to you, if you have watched any of our Strategy in the Storm sessions, whether it's been live or whether it's been via a replay, what I want you to do is just hit the like button, because the fact that you're back shows that you like this content. Secondarily, if you're somebody who is here for the first time, I would really appreciate if you could just write in the comments first time and let us know that you're here for the first time, so we can welcome you personally onto the Impact Show. Now, the funniest thing is this show was created for you. It was created for the property investors, the budding property investors, the advanced property investors who were out there in the world doing property, and who all started reaching out to me the moment lockdown took place and said, Samuel, how do I do this? Samuel, what do I do with this? Samuel, this is going on in my property business. I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about that. And it's really interesting because I found myself trying to give so many people answers, and there's something really interesting that happened, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in this show today. But because all of this was happening at the initial stage of the lockdown, I said to my team, what can we do to provide support for the whole community? What can we do rather than just saying to our coaching clients, okay, I'll help you, and not be able to help other people who maybe need the help, but maybe don't know who I am, or maybe need the help, or don't know who my team are, or maybe need the help, but don't have access to a property strategist. And we came up with the idea of the Impact Show and the Strategy in the Storm series, which has now been going on for a number of weeks. I don't even know how many weeks we've been going on for, but we have weekly, again and again, made ourselves available for a minimum of an hour. I don't even think we've had any shows which have been an hour, and we've just basically opened up the phone lines, and from opening up the phone lines, allowed people to call in absolutely free and just share whatever challenges they have in their property business, so we can strategize with them. And so far over the weeks, we have had some fantastic shows. Obviously, I've shared content, I've jumped on the whiteboard, broken down concepts so people understand certain key elements as it pertains to property investing, etc. But side by side with that, we've also heard so many people come and share what's going on in their business and been able to get help as it pertains to moving forward in their property journey. So we're now probably 10 weeks in, 9 to 10 weeks in of these strategies in a storm. And guys, let me say this, if you haven't watched any of our previous Q&As, our previous live Strategy in a Storm sessions, and you are interested in property, especially if you're a complete beginner and you're just starting the journey for the first time, go and watch some of those previous episodes straight after this one, so you can get some full value out of that, and you can start to learn what kind of questions people have been asking us and the kind of ways we've been strategizing with them. Now, just to get us kick started, before we jump into turning on the phone line, I just want to say to you as a disclaimer, all information provided and results given are exemplary. Each person's results may vary or differ. Results are based on consistent strategies, and we advise that you always seek legal and financial advice from a qualified professional. And If you are struggling to find a qualified professional, reach out to me and my team, and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction. Now, why would we be happy to point you in the right direction? Because the more you do better in your property journey, the more we can do better in our property journey. Property is about relationships, it's about connection, it's about community. So the more we connect and commune, the more we get value out of the relationship. Now, just before I open up the phone line, if you're looking forward to getting some value into tonight's show, I just want you to write the word value in the chat. If you're looking forward to get some value into tonight's show, just write the word value in the chat. And without further ado, should I wait? Should I wait? Why should I wait? Let's jump in. Phone lines are open, guys. Okay, phone lines are open. So take full advantage. If you haven't hit like already, hit the like button. Let the YouTube world know that this is content that is valuable. If you're brand new and you've never been on the stream before, you might have to press back to go and hit the like, but also subscribe to the channel. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, this will allow you to keep up to date with all the content we drop as and when we drop it. So when we are going to go live like now, you'll get that notification 20 minutes, 30 minutes before we go live. And side by side with that, when we drop a new video, which we drop every single week, you'll be notified about that also. So without further ado, phone lines are open. Telephone number is on the screen. Call in number 0330 606 0403. Feel free to call through, and all you will need is the access code, which is also on the screen here right now, 695922. Let's start strategizing with you guys into the session. Now, as you guys are just getting comfortable with all of that, as you guys are getting together and getting comfortable to, call in, I want to share with you guys something I came across this week. And I thought this was extremely interesting. And because of how interesting I thought it was, I thought, you know what, let me share this on the show tonight. Now, the funniest thing is, we've been sharing a whole bunch of mainstream publications over the last couple of weeks, and it's so interesting when you see the kind of stuff that mainstream media are putting out and what their thought process is, or their rationale is, or what they're trying to sell us as ideologies in terms of what's going on in the property market. So I came across this article from the BBC, fairly recently. This was on the 1st, so just a couple of days ago. Today's the 4th. Happy Independence Day to any of you from the USA who are tuning in. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of the 4th of July, because I know it's a big celebration for those of our US viewers and listeners. Now, came across this article, and I just thought it was extremely interesting, I thought it was extremely interesting. I'm going to put the article on the screen so you guys can see it. And straight after I put it on the screen, I'm then going to kind of touch base through it and talk about some of the things which I thought were quite interesting. Now, if anybody's interested in the link to this, again, I usually say this. If you're interested in the link, let me know. And I can get the team to throw the link in the chat, or I can put the link in the chat myself. Headline, BBC News, this is on the 1st of July 2020, 782 comments on this thread, which shows that this is something people are highly engaging with. It says UK house prices in first annual fall for 8 years. UK house prices in first annual fall for 8 years. Now let's dig into this and see what the BBC are trying to inform us of. All right. So the article reads, UK house prices were 0.1%, extremely low, 0.1% lower in June than the same month a year ago. The first annual fall since December 2012. So this is over a period of 8 years, so it's very interesting, according to the Nationwide. Now, for some of you who've been following us on the Impact Show, you will know exactly why that's very interesting, because on last week's show, one of the things we were talking about is how Nationwide have now decided to increase the deposits for first-time buyers. And we also spoke a little bit about Barclays, I think, on last week's show, about how Barclays have now said they're pulling all of their mortgage products, every single mortgage products for limited companies which are controlled or owned by one sole person, and also LLPs. All which is quite interesting if you're a property investor and have been for quite a while, who keeps abreast of news, because you understand that, hold on a minute, isn't that all of the products that are available to us? Because we are the people that use that stuff. And the answer to that is Yes, all right. And that's one of the things that's so funny about this stuff. When these companies, when these big conglomerates decide to pull products, what they're actually doing is they're saying, no, we don't want to work with these particular people at this particular time. So I want you guys to be very, very mindful of that, okay? Because a lot of that takes place a lot of the time. And if you are not mindful of it, what happens is you go out there, you go and secure a deal, you think, okay, I'm going to be able to get funding for this deal. And before you know it, unfortunately, you're unable to get funding for the deal. And the reason you're unable to get funding for the deal is because they've pulled all the products. And why have they pulled the products? Well, they've pulled the products for a number of reasons, but they might have pulled the products because they know for them it's potentially too risky. Now, this is one of the things you have to be mindful of, guys. You have to be mindful of this stuff. What's risky for some is not risky for all. Okay, there are private investors out there, just to say the least. There are private investors out there who would happily invest in your deals. There are private investors out there who would happily fund your property projects if they knew about them. Okay, and this is one of the reasons why it's good to connect with other people. It's good to be out there at the forefront of what you're doing in property and share value with others. Okay, because what value do you get from sharing value with others? You get the opportunity to potentially work with other people as well. All right, guys, so I want you to be very, very mindful of this as they're pulling all of these products. There are other ways to get funded. Okay, we have crowdfunding. Okay, if you're one of those people who want to take notes, you should start writing notes now. Crowdfunding, private investment. By private investment, we mean friends and family. Okay, but crowdfunding, friends and family. There are so many ways you can get funded on your property deals if you know how. Quick shout out to Lawrence and family. They said, evening impact team. Good evening, Lawrence and the family. And they've also wrote a comment saying value. So I'm glad that you guys have got value from one of the shows before or are getting value right now. So again, guys, those of you who are brand new to the Impact Show, brand new to the Strategy and the Storm, I would like for you to just write the word new or first time in the comments. And those of you who have been here before, feel free to write been here before. And side by side with that, whether you're new or whether you've been here before, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can be a part of our community and see what we're doing as we go forward and how we help people move forward in their property journey. Now, let's go deeper into this news article. UK house prices were 0.1% lower in June than the same month a year ago, the first annual fall since December 2012, according to the Nationwide. The article goes on to say the Building Society also said, this is talking of Nationwide, property values had dropped 1.4% compared with May as the coronavirus lockdown hit the housing market. Please bear in mind, okay, that let me not go into the politics, all right? But as the coronavirus lockdown hit the housing market, it goes on to say sales plummeted and viewings halted when the sector was effectively frozen. Now, the reason why I have to freeze there is because if you watch 7 weeks, 8 weeks back, when we started doing the Strategy and the Storm, that is the exact statement that I made. I basically said, we are going to see effects in the market because the market has been frozen. The market has been turned off by the government effectively. All right. And this is what happens. The government makes a decision. It has ripple effects. It's just like when you throw a pebble or a stone into a lake and you see those ripple effects. This is exactly what's happening. So it says here, the Nationwide said the magnitude of the shock to the economy made a house price fall unsurprising. Now, I don't know why that's unsurprising when we were talking about this on the Impact Show 8 weeks ago. Okay, and this is why for me sometimes it's actually a slightly comedic to look at some of the mainstream media press releases when you kind of have your eyes open. Okay, because when you're actually taking note of what's going on, you're taking note of the decisions being made, and you have a kind of idea of how that has an impact on other people and other investors, etc. A lot of the time you can already see what's going on and what's going to happen. So it says the Nationwide said the magnitude of the shock to the economy made the house price fall unsurprising. It said the outlook for the housing market was highly uncertain in the coming months. Now, this is another interesting thing. Okay, so they're kind of prepping people for something. They're saying the outlook, okay, for the property market, for the housing market was, and they use these terms in quotations, highly uncertain in the coming months. They then showed a graph. They went on to say the housing market, as with the rest of the economy, has been hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic. The lockdown meant activity slowed sharply, with sales at half the levels of a year earlier. Viewings, sales, and moves have now resumed in much of the UK, but buyers and sellers face fresh unease about job and income prospects, prompting some to rethink plans over property. I'll read the next two paragraphs and then we'll jump back into the show. The Nationwide, which bases its figures on its own mortgage lending, okay, so please bear that in mind. All of the figures Nationwide are actually measuring here are based on their own lending. Now, I will say this for context for those of you who don't know. Nationwide is one of the biggest, they're one of the largest residential mortgage providers. Okay, they are actually one of the largest residential mortgage providers. So that's again something else to take in mind and bear in mind. Is quite important. The Nationwide, which bases its figures on its own mortgage lending, said that house prices on an annual basis dropped from a 1.8% rise in May to a 0.1% fall in June as the effects of the shutdown were felt. The typical home was now worth £216,403, it said. Okay, and usually the typical home in the UK is roughly benchmarked around £224,000. This will be welcomed by first-time buyers hoping for a consistent fall in house prices, although restrictions by lenders mean mortgages have become more difficult to secure. Now look guys, if you're reading this and you're really taking note of this, you'd understand that this is very, very interesting news. Now it's interesting for several reasons. One, because obviously it's got the rigmarole that their usual stuff has, but the second reason why it's quite interesting is because they're basically saying this is something that first time buyers are going to be happy about. Why? Because it's a price drop. It means it's easier to buy your first ever house. But they've also said that lending has actually become more stringent. And again, this is something we covered last week and the week before in regards to Nationwide. Nationwide changed their lending criteria for first time buyers 2 weeks ago and basically stated that from now on, people who want to buy their first ever property will no longer, for residential properties, be allowed to only place down a 10% deposit. They would now be expected to put down a minimum of 15% or maybe more in some cases. I actually heard today from one of the estate agents I was working with on the viewings I was going on today that apparently Nationwide said they were going to allow 40 people across the whole of the UK to receive 10% mortgages. 40 people, 10% deposit mortgages, 40 people. Now, if you think about the amount of people in the UK, just take a rough estimate, then take a rough estimate of the amount of people trying to get a mortgage, then take a rough estimate of the amount of those people who are actually trying to get their first house or residential property, and then think to yourself, Nationwide are actually saying they're going to offer only 40 of these mortgages. That is absolutely ridiculous. They might as well say we're not offering them. I think without being too deep, that's probably Nationwide's way of saying, look, friends and family will take care of you. If you're the director of Nationwide's friends and family, you'll be okay. But if you're not, I don't know what we're going to do with you. But look, at the end of the day, if they are asking first time buyers to up their deposits by 10%, 20%, then you've got to bear in mind that that increase of a deposit is going to hit new and first time buyers very hard. And if it hits new and first time buyers very hard, that means they're not going to actually be able to take advantage of the price drop. So my question to you today on the Impact Show, my real honest genuine question to you, and I want you to think about this: if prices are dropping, and as a byproduct of prices dropping, apparently it's easier for the first time buyer to buy, but first time buyers now need a larger deposit in order to execute, in order to buy, who is this really a great opportunity for? And you know, guys, if you feel free, if you feel confident enough or comfortable enough, feel free to write your answer in the comments. Let me know in the comments who you think this is the opportunity of the decade, who you think this is the opportunity of the year for. But I want people who are watching this show, people who are engaging with the content that we share, engaging with the insights, knowledge that we try to elaborate and give to people, to think about that for yourself. I want you to really, really think about that for yourself. Like, who do you think is going to gain? Who do you think is this is really the key time for, in spite of the things we've just shared? Okay, if first time buyers apparently are at the best time of this year in terms of opportunity to actually buy their first time property because prices are dropping, but side by side with that, we also are hearing that first time buyers need to up their deposits, which actually means it's going to be harder for them, because how many people do you know who have deposits ready? Okay, there are a lot of first time buyers who over an extended period of time save up their deposit in order to buy. And in many of those cases, yes, they may be getting gifts from friends and family in order to put down as deposits. But the reality is, for most people, their first time buyer deposit is usually saved up by themselves or someone they know. Now, the issue with that is you need time to save. Okay, you need time to save, and you also need something else to save, something I don't want to be too deep about, but I'll say it you also need income or money to save. Now, if 40% of the country have been furloughed and they're on 80% of their wages and are pessimistic about what's going to happen in the future, that may result in a lot of people not actually saving that revenue for property acquisition. They may actually just be saving that revenue in case a rainy day shows up. Okay, so you need to bear that in mind. And if that's the truth, if most of these people are saving their money in case a rainy day shows up, then they're not going to be in a position to utilize those funds to invest. And we've got a comment coming through here from Lawrence and the team. And I think you're so right. They've said investors. I think you're so right. I think investors, and I'll add on another group of people, the group I was thinking of specifically, creative investors. Investors and creative investors are the people who, in my opinion, have a perfect opportunity right now. Now, will that opportunity get better throughout the year? I have a strong inclination that the answer to that is yes. I do believe, again, I was speaking to this estate agent earlier today. He said he's waiting for January of 2021. He feels like that's when the market's going to be ready. He feels that's when the market's going to drop enough. I said to him, me and my team have been talking about this, and our thought process is probably more October, looking from September, but ideally October, November, December, going into January. And the reason why, we have that little difference is, for me, I feel as though a lot more media is going to come out in the second quarter, in this third quarter of the year. So we've just entered into July. This is the third Q of the year. And what's going to happen is a lot more media coverage is going to start to come out. Like I've been talking about over the last 7 weeks, a lot of more media coverage is going to come out about our economy. And the moment a lot more media coverage comes out about the economy over the next 4-8 weeks, then what's going to happen is we're going to start to see what I talk about in all my videos, herd mentality. We're going to start to see how people respond to the drama that's taking place. Now, one of the things that's interesting when we start talking about herd mentality and how people are going to respond is the fact that weeks ago, we were sharing that the market is going to actually fluctuate as a result of this. So again, this is why it's so important to have a mastermind group, a group of people around you that you focus on property with. Okay, UK house prices in first annual fall for 8 years. Okay, I don't want to say it like this, but I have to say it because I want people to understand this. This is how the scaremongering starts. Okay, this is how the scaremongering starts. This is how it begins. This is how media outlets like the BBC start to get people thinking, oh, in the last 8 years, there's a drop. Okay, well, if it's going to keep dropping because people don't know if they're getting their income from furlough or not, then prices are going to drop even more. So those prospective retiring landlords are now going to say, yep, I want to sell now. I don't want to wait until it's right at the bottom. I want to sell now. And you're going to start to see that herd mentality. And the reality is, if the media put out enough negative news, enough people will start to sell. And if enough people start to sell, it triggers herd mentality. And the moment herd mentality is triggered, I hope everyone knows what I mean when I'm talking about herd mentality. If you don't, just put a question mark in the chat and I'll elaborate on what herd mentality is. But the moment herd mentality kicks off, what then happens is, going back to my old principle I talk about all the time, the conundrum of supply and demand. Supply and demand. And what happens in the world of supply and demand? Something very, very simple. When there is an oversupply, there becomes a less demand. Why? Because there's so many properties on the market where people are trying to sell that there can't be so many people trying to buy. So as a direct byproduct, the price of those opportunities, of those acquisitions, of those properties drops. And when the price of those properties drop, what does that do for you as an investor? What does that do for me as an investor, as a creative investor? It opens up the opportunity for us to go and get properties at prices that people didn't even think you could acquire those properties for. So guys, I want you to be mindful of this stuff. I want you to be prepped. I want you to be prepared, okay? If you're getting value from this content, hit the like button, feel free to subscribe and become a part of the community as well. All right, guys, if you're getting value from what we've shared so far, hit the like button, press subscribe, and be a part of the community. So I've got a comment here. Lawrence and team have said, we are thinking October, November after the second reduction in furlough salaries. Yeah, that's gonna be another blow, in my opinion. That is definitely, and thank you guys for the comment. That is so true. That's going to be another blow to the people who are considering selling already. Okay. Now, this is the way the property market works. There are people who are already thinking of selling, and there are people who never thought to sell. If the trauma, if the drama, if the crisis is enough for those people who were never thinking of selling, they could sell just as a reaction to what's going on. But then side by side with that, there's a group of people who were already considering selling, people that were already thinking, I want to retire, people that were already thinking, you know what, I've done my property stint, I've been doing this for 20 years, 18 years, 12 years, 24 years, whatever it is for them, and I just want to retire anyway. But I was probably going to retire in 2022. That was kind of my year. But now with what's going on, you know, the tax changes over the last 4 years, additionally, the new HMO legislation, this is specifically for those who are HMO owners, the new HMO legislations that came quite hard October 2018. Side by side with that, you know, not just Section 24, not just the October 2018, but all the other things that are taking place. There was Brexit. Brexit was a kind of, you know, a big rumbling uncertainty for so many people, which allowed a lot of landlords who previously weren't thinking of actually selling up to start thinking of selling up. So again, there's so many things, so many variables, so many, you know, conundrums that are kind of taking place all at the same time. And what all of these things are doing is they're making people make decisions that potentially these people were not going to make before. And this is the reason why all of this is so important. It's so important because look, if you are an investor, if you are a creative investor, if you're someone who understands how to tackle the property market and take advantage when an opportunity shows itself, this might actually be the best time this whole decade for you to start grabbing opportunities. And guys, I say that wholeheartedly because I've seen these kind of things happen before. Okay, in 2007, 2008, in the demise, you know, the credit crisis, as it was called, people who were not millionaires became multi-millionaires from utilizing property as a vehicle because they spotted the opportunity. What makes you think this is any different? Economically, all of the signs have shown that we are basically economically, financially, this government, this country, I don't want to say the world, but a number of nations right now are in exactly the same position that they were in 2008, 2009. So the reality is you need to think about your own position right now. Okay, I know investors who invest, even some investors who invest way bigger than I invest, who have said to me, look, Samuel, I'm just basically getting my cash ready because I know opportunities are coming. And guys, I want you to be the kind of people who understand if opportunities are coming, I don't want to lose out. I don't want to be the person who misses the opportunity of the decade. I don't want to wait another 8 years or 10 years. Look at the article we read. Look at the article we read just a moment ago. Okay, I'm going to put it back on the screen for you guys to see exactly what I'm talking about. Look at what this article says. This article tells us UK house prices in first annual fall for 8 years. Why does it say that? Because they are trying to help you understand, to help you see that there is a connection between where the economy is now today and where the economy was in 2012. Okay, now if you understand what 2012 was the UK's rebound from the 2007-2008 dilemma. And what do I mean by it was the rebound? Well, it was the rebound because 2012 is where the UK had the Olympics. Okay, there was a number of things that kind of surged together so that in 2012 the UK was kind of really lifting itself out, like officially, of the real process it went through means of the 2007, 2008, 2009 credit crisis. So 2012 was kind of the year it cemented, look, we're out of that. There's no recession here anymore. We're good and we're moving forward. So if on the 1st of July, 2020, we're seeing reports from the BBC, the primary mainstream media outlet for the UK, and they're purporting that UK house prices are dealing with something slightly worse. It's not a massive percentage, so I'm not going to go on the it's worse, but comparable, let's use that word, if we're dealing with a financial economy that is currently, especially in the housing market, comparable to something that was going on in 2012, then that should tell you guys that potentially we are in one of the best opportunities for this decade. And the key is all about taking advantage. Now, if you guys have got any questions, feel free to throw your questions in the chat. We usually prefer people to call in. So if you haven't called in before, you can feel free to call in. Just utilize the telephone number and also the access code, and we will strategize through any challenges you may be having in your property business. And side by side of that, if you got questions, quick questions you want to throw into the chat, feel free to throw them into the chat. It's always easier to speak to people on the line. However, just because we can hear exactly what the person's going through, we could talk to them exactly about their scenario and situation, and we can start to give some real value in that regard. So again, guys, let us know if you got any questions for tonight's show, so we can add value to the community by helping you to move forward in your property journey as well. Now, with this being said about this article, I found it very, very interesting because at the end of the day, we live in a world where all of the news is not always told. People are not always sharing everything with you. And as you read through that article, you start to resonate and pick up some of the ideas that the government want to share with you. What is the government trying to tell you? In one vein, it seems like the government is trying to encourage first-time buyers. But in another vein, it also is indicating to the realities of Nationwide and other lenders saying, no, we're not actually going to make it easy for first-time buyers. We're going to make it slightly harder. So the reality is, it's a secondary way, in my opinion anyway. This is what I'd share with you. What I see happening right now in the property market is a secondary way for the financial institutions, the lenders, to slow the market down. Now, financially, behind the scenes, we know a whole lot of dramas taking place for a lot of these financial institutions. It was the second or third strategy in a storm we did, where I shared that with you guys. That was a number of weeks ago, probably 8 or 9 weeks ago now. And I knew that not because I've got a crystal ball and I know the future. I knew that very simply because I was looking at the American market at the time. And on March the 23rd, we saw reports in the US that basically the financial stock markets in America had plummeted lower than what was going on in 2007 and 2008. So I already had indications from March the 23rd that something was going wrong with the economy, and that would always, as usual, trickle from the US to the UK or vice versa, because that's an interconnected relationship in terms of finance and economy. Now, obviously, the property market is a slower market to react and respond to everything and to anything. So as a direct byproduct, if you understand how the property market works, you should usually expect a 6 month, 8 month, in some cases, depending on what's going on, maybe even a 12-month delay before you start seeing what's going on in the property market be affected by what's going on in the financial markets. And the reason why is because the financial markets generally tends to affect what we call institutional investors. Institutional investors are the largest scale investors in the property industry. So you're talking about hedge funds, you're talking about pensions, you're talking about these big organizations, conglomerate organizations who buy multiple units of property. Now, when they start getting pinched, when they start getting hurt, that can sometimes affect their cash flow and their ability to liquidate. And if it affects their ability to liquidate, in some of those cases, those organizations are the lenders for smaller property investors like yourself, like myself. So because they are actually the mainstream lenders for smaller investors, what generally tends to happen is if they get hurt financially, they then ripple effect that hurt onto the smaller scale investor. And there's different ways they do that. One of the ways they do that is by some of the things we've seen recently. They might ask people to increase their deposits in order to buy. And by doing that, what are they doing? They're slowing down the amount of people that can buy, and they know that themselves. Secondarily, what they might do, they might slightly up interest rates. Okay, now the upping of interest rates is usually the last thing to take place, simply because they know that interest rates are an after the fact scenario. You don't really engage with your interest rate until after you've already got the mortgage product. So the deposit change is something that they know is going to deter people from acquiring first and foremost. The second thing that they do a lot of the time, outside of the deposit change, which is another thing that they've started to mention, is they start pulling favorable products. Now, again, on last week's show, those of you who haven't watched that at the end of this show, go watch last week's show. On last week's show, I read to you guys a report that was written in the newspaper about Barclays. It was saying that Barclays had made a confident decision that they were pulling every single mortgage product for any company owned mortgages. And what they actually said in the report, which was quite interesting, again, go and watch our last live stream in order to get all of that report. But one of the things they said, which was so phenomenal, they said the reason they're doing this is because they have small demand from that market. Now, I appreciate that Barclays are not probably one of the most savviest when it comes to, investment lending. But the reality is, I find it quite questionable that Barclays say they don't have a significant amount of business coming from limited companies who want to take out mortgages, especially since the announcement of Section 24 a number of years ago, which has made a lot of property investors actually shift over and start opening companies in order to invest in property, because it just makes sense. If you've got the majority of savvy property investors starting to open companies in order to own properties in their companies because of the mortgage relief, mortgage tax relief, etc., then you've got to bear in mind that even if any lender doesn't have a lot of clients currently who own limited companies and who are looking for mortgages, over time that will increase. Of course it will increase, because more and more people are getting companies, they're creating limited companies or getting into LLP partnerships. So for me, I found it very, very questionable that Barclays was saying this, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. So guys, like I said, hit like, hit subscribe, become a part of the community. Let us know if you're getting value from this particular show. And if you have specific questions, feel free to write them through on the chat, or side by side with that, feel free to call the number. The phone lines are open just above the screen, and also utilize the access code in order so we can strategize through any specific scenario that you may have in your property journey and that you are interested in us discussing. Now, as you guys are doing that, getting comfortable with doing that, another thing that was basically announced this week, I didn't get the article on screen, but I did want to share it with you guys because I thought if we had enough time, it would be very interesting to basically talk about this. And that was basically the fact that there was some news reported this week about evictions and how the process was slightly going to be changing, and the date was actually announced for eviction deadlines for most landlords. And this is going to be quite helpful for people doing rent to rent, people that have been significantly affected by tenants not paying during the current climate and so on. So hopefully if I can get this article up, I'll be able to share it with you guys, because I thought it was extremely interesting, and I thought a lot of people would actually get value from this. But as mentioned, I didn't think we're going to have time on the show to actually share it. But since we have, I will definitely do so if I can get it up. Actually, I can get it up because I know exactly where to get it from. So guys, feel free, as I mentioned, to write any comments that you have through, and we will definitely touch base with them as and when we can on the show. If I can get this article on the screen for you guys, that will be really helpful, because then that way you guys will be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. But again, guys, if you guys want the links to anything that I'm sharing on tonight's show, just let me know and we'll be happy to pass that on to you guys as well, whether it be through me throwing it in the chat, in the comment box, or whether it be through us having it as a link in the description of the video. And side by side with that, guys, if there's any of you who are brand new on this particular stream and you want to basically learn a bit more about how we as a business and how some of the investors I'm coaching are taking advantage of this current climate, if you look in the description of this video after we finish the show, you can find a key access link to our webinar, which we're going to be running on Monday. And in that webinar, we're going to be talking about how to take advantage in this current climate and win. Okay, so you can go and register for that. It's an on-demand webinar where you'll basically be able to learn how to take advantage in the current climate and win. All right, so I've got the article up right now. This is fantastic. And let me get this up for you guys as well, so you guys can see it, because I think this was another thing that I came across this week, and I thought, you know what, it'd be great to share this because of how powerful this is going to be, because a lot of people are going to be basically challenged by exactly what we're talking about here. So let's see if we can get it up and jump straight into this. Okay, excellent. So this is from the Residential Landlord Association, this particular article, which I came across this week, and I thought it was extremely important. So I thought, you know what, let's try and see if we can get it up so we can share it with our viewers on the Impact Show. So it starts off by saying courts will hear possession cases from the 24th of August. Okay, so guys, I need you to understand that if you've got tenants who haven't been paying your rent, this is going to be crucial for you. All right. So again, you might want to take notes, or you might want to go and connect with the Residential Landlord Association so you can get more information on this. So I basically say landlords have welcomed confirmation from a government minister that the courts will begin to hear possession cases from the 24th of August. So this is next month on the 24th. It says providing greater certainty for the rental market. Responding to a series of parliamentary questions, Lord Greenhay, a minister at the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, has said that from the 24th of August, the courts will begin to process possession cases again. Now, obviously, if you are oblivious to what I'm talking about, again, go watch some of our older live streams. We spoke about how the eviction ban was stopping a lot of people who weren't getting paid rent from being able to evict the tenants that were basically absconding the rental payments. So again, this is going to be a great relief to a number of landlords who haven't been getting paid throughout this process. And the funniest thing about this is, you know, some of these landlords, they've been placed on furlough because some of them work jobs as well. So imagine a landlord, he's being placed on furlough. He then thinks maybe he'll be okay because he'll rely on his rental income, and then his rental income's not coming because of the simple fact that the tenants are no longer paying as well. So he couldn't even evict them previously based on this. So it says, responding to a series of parliament. Okay, we've read that. I'm going to read just two more paragraphs and then we'll jump out of this. It says, after what would be a 5-month suspension, the minister argued that this would be an important step towards ending the lockdown and will protect landlords' important right to regain their property. He goes on to say, he reiterated, however, that work is ongoing to ensure the most vulnerable tenants can get the help they need when possession cases resume. Last paragraph I'm going to read again. It's a very extensive document, but it goes on to say, the minister confirmed that under the plans to end Section 21 repossessions in England as part of the Renters Reform Bill, ministers want to ensure that landlords are able to swiftly and smoothly regain their property through the courts where they have a legitimate reason to do so. So guys, I want you to be really, really mindful of this. Okay, so what this means is the 24th of August. Now, let me help you with this a little bit more, okay? Because for some of you won't know how to really work this. Now, if you have not yet placed a Section 8 or a Section 21 notice towards your specific tenant who's not paying on time, then what you have to understand is on the 24th of August, when they do open up to take cases, your case will not be seen, okay? And the reason your case will not be seen is for a number of reasons, but the basic reasons, just for you guys to have as an understanding of how it works, okay? Previously, in the past, you would have to wait for a tenant to miss 2 months of rental payments before you could basically, you know, disclose a Section 8 or a Section 21, depending on which is the most appropriate, usually a Section 8. But before you could lodge a Section 8 notice with that tenant, you'd have to wait for them to miss 2 months of rental payments. Now, one of the things you need to be mindful of right now is because of the eviction ban. That eviction ban has basically stated that now tenants have to be 3 months in arrears before you can serve such notice. And because the courts were kind of in a limbo even if you did serve the notice, you probably wouldn't get a court date. Now, I want you to think of it like this. If you are one of those people, whether it's a renter or a landlord specifically, who has been on the ball, then what that would mean is in March, in April, in May, when these specific tenants would have missed payments, potentially, if that was your case. Again, I'm grateful that was not our case in any side of our business. But if you have tenants that have missed payments March, April, May, or April, May, June, you should have by now served a section notice, an eviction notice, okay? The appropriate eviction notice based on the criteria that you are dealing with. Now, if you want to know what is the appropriate eviction notice, you can do a Google search, do some checking, but the best thing to do is to seek appropriate legal advice, okay? So we've got an eviction specialist we work with whenever we're doing any of our evictions. Even on a basic minimum, we just at least consult them, call them and say, look, what do you think we should do on this regard, etc. Like, we're always very big on checking with counselors. So find out the right and appropriate eviction notice to basically to deploy, and deploy that eviction notice. Deploy that eviction notice as soon as possible. Now, why am I encouraging you to do that as soon as possible? For one simple reason. The simple reason is the fact that very soon, very, very soon, the courts will open up on the 24th of August. And it will take a period of time before you can get a court date. So if you haven't even lodged your section request, if you haven't even, applied to evict the tenant, what you're basically doing is you're prolonging the experience even longer for yourself. And this is something you need to make sure that you're not doing, because you don't want to be in a position where that tenant is getting even more months to basically defer their payments. You want to be in a position where that tenant basically is in a position where they have to pay as soon as possible. And if they're getting away with paying, then you've put them in a position where you're taking them through the judicial system in order for them to be evicted, okay? And guys, it's a very simple process. It does take time, takes a long time. I've done evictions in the past. It takes time, okay? So the best thing to do is be prepared and be proactive. Don't be reactive. Don't be the person who's waiting for things to happen before you now come and say, oh, this is what we're going to do. Or, oh, I can do this. Oh, is that actually possible? Okay. What you need to know, okay, is that this stuff is actually created in terms of this eviction process to favor the tenant. Okay, many people are not aware of this, guys. I'm just letting you know this stuff is created to favor the tenant. And this is why it's interesting when you read stuff like, let me say, the minister confirmed that under the plans to end the Section 21 repossessions in England as part of the Renters Reform Bill, ministers want to ensure that landlords are able to swiftly and smoothly regain their property through the courts where they have a legitimate reason to do so. Now, this last part of that statement, legitimate reason to do so, that part of the statement is there because they know how often they make it extremely difficult for landlords to regain their properties. And if you're someone who's ever done any kind of eviction process, you will know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? Because in court, judges generally tend, from all of my experiences, people I've spoke to, people I've coached, people I've evicted myself, judges tend to make it very difficult for a landlord to evict somebody. Okay, now is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Guys, it is what it is. And the reality is, the more you know that it is what it is, the more you know the facts, the more you can work with the facts. If you do not know the facts, you cannot work with the facts. And this is the reason why on the Impact Show, we try to go out of our way to help you understand the facts so you can be equipped. Okay, you can go through the scenario equipped rather than ill-equipped. All right, so I'm going to just jump into the comments, see if we've got any questions right now. Side by side, guys, the phone line is still open. So if you have any particular scenario going on in your property business that you'd like to talk about, feel free to let us know and I will jump on the call with you in order to help you move forward in your property journey through means of strategizing with you. And like I mentioned earlier, you can join us on Monday's on-demand webinar to see how you can take advantage in this current climate and win. You just need to go to the link www.impactproperties.co.uk/webinar. Okay, and I'll throw that into the chat so everybody can have access to that. You can register for the webinar right there, and when you register for the webinar on Monday, the 6th of July at 8 p.m., you'll be able to learn exactly some of the things we're going to be doing, some of the thoughts and secrets that we're going to be applying going forward in our property journey in this specific climate. Because guys, this is the time, in my opinion, this is the time to take full advantage of the current property climate. Now, considering, let me check. Okay, considering we've got no new questions on the live chat, I've got something that's just come in. Okay, do we have to wait 2 months of no rent or free now, as I have a tenant I need to evict? Okay, the answer to that, Abina, thank you for your question. The answer to that is 3 months. Okay, the answer to that is 3 months. That's the legislation presently, 3 months. What has happened is the eviction process was extended, and it was also paused, so you couldn't actually get dates in court. Okay, and it was extended to 3 months rather than 2 months. So you are supposed to wait for 3 months. Now, if you want even more value on that answer, Abina, or anyone else, just write the word value in the chat, and I will give you a little hack that we've been using for a number of years, and something that will help you in this current climate. Okay, so if you are interested in getting even more value on Abina's question, just write the word value in the chat, and I will jump in and give you something of even more value to help you on your journey. So webinar links in the chat. Feel free to use that link, register for the webinar on Monday, take full advantage, understand what we're doing in the current climate, and win. Okay, I've seen the word value coming through in the chat. Now, this is what I'm going to share with you for you to get, or to take full advantage of this opportunity as it pertains to evictions. Now, it's probably best I jump on the whiteboard for this, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to. I'm just going to explain it, and hopefully you will understand it. And if you don't understand, just tell me you don't, and then I'll elaborate. Now, usually, I'm going to make it even simpler. I'm going to paint it out in a real simple fashion, okay? If you charge rent on the 1st of every month, so on the 1st of July, you was expecting rent. On the 1st of August, you're expecting rent. On the 1st of September, you're expecting rent. If that's your framework, you charge rent according to your AST, your assured short hold tenancy agreement, or whatever other agreement you have in place. You charge rent on the 1st of each month. Now, obviously, this generally relates to AST, because that's what we'd be talking about in terms of eviction. If that's something you generally use, okay, the 1st of the month, and somebody misses the 1st of July rental payment, okay, they are 1 month late to pay rent, because on the 1st, legally, they're classified to pay that rent for that month. Okay. Now, why is that relevant, and why does that help? Well, it helps and it's relevant because of this. When you get to month 2, typically, usually, so before this lockdown, it was about the 2nd month. When you get to month 2, the way it works is this. If the person misses a rental payment on the 1st of August, and they've also missed their rental payment from the 1st of July, legally on the 2nd of August, you can file for your section. On the 2nd of August, 24 hours after the missed payment for that month, they are legally classified as being 2 months in arrears, because the date of their payment was the 1st. Okay, so what I'd encourage you to do, Abina, and anyone else who's maybe not heard of this before, is have a process. So in our business, we have a process in place which basically stipulates when any person previously was a month and 1 day late on rental payments, which as a technical classification makes them 2 months late in rent payments, we would issue the section agreement, unless there was prior communication, we understood what was going on, or there was some other arrangement in place. But generally, we would issue the section being a month and a day late in rent, which classifies as 2 months late. Now, obviously, everybody who's watching this should be able to infer what that means with an extension where we now have to face 3 months. It means basically the same thing. If somebody is missed July the 1st rental payment, and they go on to miss August the 1st rental payment, and then they miss the date of September 1st rental payment, on the 2nd of September, you can issue them a section notice, basically because they're 3 months late in terms of their rent. So if that was of value to you, write the word value in the chat. Hopefully that's going to help a few people to move forward in their property journey so they can take full advantage of that opportunity to evict people the appropriate way. Okay. And again, these are things I've learned from working with an eviction specialist. I want to encourage you guys, to connect with people who know what they're doing, connect with eviction specialists, connect with people, legal people that basically go to court and evict people appropriately. The more you connect with these people, the better position you'll be in order to take full advantage of the opportunity and help people moving forward, because that's what it's about. It's definitely about that. Thank you, Abin. I've seen your value in the comments. Now, like I said before, guys, if you're getting value from this content, hit like. Feel free to subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with what we're doing. And side by side with that, why don't you hit share and share this content with other people so other people can actually be up to date with what's going on in terms of the strategy in the storm and specifically the impact show. Now, right here, we have a resource which is of immense value for you. If you have not read the Sourcing Blueprint, this is a free blueprint, a free ebook that we created for the community, for you guys to take full advantage, of how to source and secure your own properties. It is a simple and easy read. This ebook is not to complicate things. This ebook is created to simplify things. When I came into the property industry, one of the things I found very quickly was lots of people, lots of gurus and teachers were making things sound so complicated. Now, because I came from a teaching background, my interest was how could I simplify what's going on in this property world, especially in the fields where I'm very active. And at that time, property sourcing was the predominant thing I was doing. So I said, look, let me create something. Let me create an infographic that will help people understand the simplicity of property sourcing. And that's exactly what we did. We created this infographic called the Sourcing Blueprint. But straight after I have basically created this, I then realized that this infographic in and of itself, this simple infographic would not make sense to people. If you looked at the infographic, it's just the image with 4 variables, you'd be saying, I'm even more confused. So what we then ended up doing is basically creating the ebook. And what we did by creating the ebook is basically we broke down each of the 4 different areas. Now, by breaking down each of the 4 different areas, what we've basically done is we've created an opportunity for you to be able to look through that ebook and understand what I would call, from an educational perspective, the central tenets of property sourcing. And this is why we've called it the Sourcing Blueprint. So the Sourcing Blueprint is for you. It's absolutely free. Go get your copy from the link right on the screen, www.impactproperties.co.uk/sourcing blueprint. Now, once you get that ebook, what that will allow you to do is understand the simple framework that we are using on a regular basis to source great property opportunities. Today I was out on viewing multiple properties. Why am I viewing properties? Because that's part of the process. It's part of the 4M formula, which is what I call it in-house, the 4M formula, which has become the Sourcing Blueprint. So guys, go get your copy of the Sourcing Blueprint. Click that link in the chat. Go take full advantage of that, because the moment you've got that blueprint and you understand the framework, guys, if you don't go and get the success, that's up to you. But if you do get the success, we've given you the blueprint to do it. So it's very, very simple. If you want to start sourcing properties, it's fairly simple. Use that blueprint, read through the pages of the ebook, understand exactly what you need to do, the 4 key things you need to do, and go and do them. Now, here's a little nugget. If you find any of those 4, okay, let's say you're good with 3, but you find 1 difficult. Let's say you're good with 1, you find 3 difficult. If you find any of the 4 pieces of the Sourcing Blueprint difficult, I would encourage you to connect with someone who you can leverage their skills, their abilities, in order for them to fill in the areas where you find a challenge. Okay, and that is the key to success: leverage. Okay, it's one of the biggest keys to success: leverage, leverage, leverage. We've got a video on our channel where we're talking specifically about leverage. Why are we talking about leverage on that video? Because we know it's one of the biggest keys, especially for property success. One of the examples I give in that video is when you buy a property, 9 times out of 10, you're putting a 25% deposit down, and getting a 75% mortgage. Why is that relevant to leverage? Because you are leveraging the mortgage lender's ability to give you 3/4 of the money to buy that specific property. Why is that relevant? It's relevant because leverage is how the property organization, how the property industry, how the property market actually works. So take full advantage, guys. Take full advantage and start to leverage relationships, leverage opportunities, leverage your time. Okay, go find people who have time. You might have a full-time job bogging you down, a job which doesn't allow you to actually invest in property. Take full advantage, guys, and move forward. Side by side with that, if there's anyone who's on today's live show who would like to have a call with myself, what I'm actually going to do, I'm typing it in right now, is I'm going to send you a link so you can book into our diary and let the booking notes know that this is from the Impact Show, and I will get you basically added to my diary directly for us to have a informal conversation. That's for someone who wants to have any kind of support in their property journey moving forward. So you can use the link I've just thrown into the chat, and that will be able to work for you. Okay, so take advantage of the link I've just thrown into the chat as well, impactproperties.co.uk/booking, and you can use that in order to book a call with me and my team. And if you write in your call booking notes that you are booking after being invited to because of the Impact Show, I will get the team to put that booking specifically into my diary and make sure that I end up having a chat with you. Now, without further ado, before I jump off, let me just encourage you, if you haven't already, go and watch this video right here. What comes first, deals or investors? This video is going to help you understand what came first, the chicken or the egg. Focus on the right thing so you can get the right results in your property business. Secondarily, as I've mentioned before, go and watch this video down here where we're talking about the Q&A strategy in a storm, one of our previous live shows, which is going to help you move forward. Side by side with that, like I've said, hit like, why not press subscribe and write a comment. Let us know how you found the value in tonight's show. It's been a pleasure being on with you guys. It always is a pleasure and it always will be. I'm looking forward to seeing you move forward in your property journey. And as I always say to our community, happy investing. Have a great night, guys. Take care. See you soon.